explain what homeopathy actually is?
Yes, it's a system of medicine that has evolved over at least 200 years. And the idea is that there's a disease in us that becomes an imbalance. So we get sick because we're not in harmony with ourselves. And that could be a physical reason, it can be a mental and emotional reason. Predominantly, homeopathy really gets to the cure of the problem by using the mental and emotional symptoms of the person. And what we do is we take a full case history of all the medical issues that you might have and your mental health, your emotional well-being, and we look at all the imbalances and then we collate the information together to find a homeopathic remedy that, if given in a well person, would produce these symptoms that you're currently expressing. Therefore, it's the like treats like. So you only need a minimum dose. That's the difference between the natural, that's the natural way we go, with smaller doses, not like the medical route where it's like 3 times a day for 7 days and it's constant taking of pills. Less is more with homeopathy, really. And so the remedies are made from natural substances, flower, mineral and animal. And so we look, for example, if you have hay fever, but you might have hay fever with runny nose and a cough, we'd look for remedies that, giving in a healthy person, would produce the runny nose and the cough. I find 90% of my patients now are suffering with stress-related disorders that then impacts with depression, and so therefore they have an uplifting feel to the remedies. That it's not just about treating the physical part of the body we can touch, it's the inside that we can feel but we can't see. I'm convinced it has a huge impact on that. So you take a small dose of the remedy that's best suited to you and it will produce a trigger in the body. So the remedies act as a trigger rather than the cure. They almost go like a light bulb. They switch the light on in the body of the mechanism of the body and say, right, this is how you need to heal yourself now. So it's unlike being able to track an aspirin through the body to see where the aspirin's gone. Homeopathic remedies, we're still waiting for the evidence to say how it's worked. We know it works, but we still don't have the absolute knowledge of how it's actually impacting on the physical body once taken.
If we can just clarify that homeopaths don't have to be trained as doctors first, do they?
Oh, absolutely not. Some of the best homeopaths are lay homeopaths with no medical training at all, because we don't need to know what the disease state is. We need to know what your symptoms are. We're like almost detectives. We're pulling out your symptoms that match your individual needs. So, for example, if 2 people came with a headache, but you had a headache because you didn't like being in the open air, and your friend had a headache but just loved being by the warm and drank hot drinks, there are 2 different remedies for a headache. And so therefore we're not looking at the headache remedy, we're looking at all the individual things that happen to you as a result of that. And it's your likes and dislikes as well, food likes, dislikes, and the environment, your whole medical history. It has a whole impact on what remedies you're going to get. So that's really why homeopaths like a consultation, and it usually does take at least an hour, because we want to tailor-make it for you. It's like we're tailor-making a remedy just for you, and not just pulling one off the shelf. However, arnica's a good example of you can do that for bruising. Blanketly, you could give arnica to everybody. So we do have first aid remedies, and we do have big remedies that will cover certain symptoms always. But when it's much more chronic and much more personal and a deeper level, then homeopathy really can tailor-make it to you.
What do you see as the benefits of treating things like depression and anxiety with homeopathy?
Well, it has a huge impact on particularly people that are either suffering with depression and anxiety or living with people with depression and anxiety. It's not either or, it's for everyone. So you could actually treat a whole family, the depression sufferer and the family, because you would be the support network that they rely on. And actually that's a huge ask, and therefore you need support. So homeopathy is a first port of call for support. You would get time to air how you feel and how you're dealing with or not dealing with issues yourself. So you get a real big window of time to talk to somebody that's completely neutral yet has your best interests at heart. By prescribing the remedies, you then go away with something else to support yourself. It's something to keep you going through those difficult periods, whether you're the sufferer or the carer. And I find that sometimes just having opened the door of your own well-being, you can then step forward and find things that really help you to stand on your own with this and hand back the issues of depression to the person that belongs to. So therefore, homeopathy is another tool to your kit, really. I treat a lot of gynecological problems, infertility right the way through to ovarian cysts, and I've had huge response to the treatments, and it's always great to see the change in someone that's had perhaps medical treatment for a while, disappointed with the results, and then have to try something else because there are no alternatives once you've gone through the whole of the medical route. I've treated my own pets, and animals have no idea whether homeopathy works or not, and I've seen great success where they give the remedy to the pet. They don't know whether it's a medical drug or whether it's a placebo or a homeopathic remedy. They take it, and I've seen them get up, get better.
Like new babies.
Like new babies. They don't know what they're having, and the simple things like chamomilla for screaming and crying babies, a few doses of that and they're totally calm, totally restful. Parents ring me up and say their sleep's so much better and they can't believe the change in their baby.
Homeopathy's been going on for years and years, hasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. From ancient Greek times, they have been using medicine in a homeopathic way, but had not formulated it until about 200 years ago, when a German doctor, Hahnemann, just stumbled across the idea of a minute dose of something that in a well person produces symptoms of somebody. For example, malaria was the thing he came across. He stumbled across chinoa bark that actually, given in very minute doses, produced symptoms in himself of malaria-like symptoms, and therefore he then thought this would be something worth trying, and he then went on and diluted many substances and found that the more diluted, and by diluting them into alcohol and then shaking them, and we call that succussing them, it makes a vibration in the dilution that is the part that is the most profound part of the medicine.
And that's the part that people who don't understand about it have the most trouble with, isn't it?
Yes,
because they think, how can this work?
So the more diluted, it becomes almost like the original substance is missing. But with the onset of trying to understand how water molecules work, I believe we will discover the true understanding of homeopathy, because I think the water holds the key here. Because not only do we dilute it into alcohol, we do into water as well. So it's what the water's doing, I feel. But anyway, the remedies came about from Hahnemann, and a lot of the Indian doctors took it on board quite early in their practices, and it is very much at home in India.
So tell me how you got into homeopathy.
In my late teens and early 20s, I became quite unwell, and I went to a local doctor in London. He prescribed medicine for blood pressure and told me I had a heart problem that would never go away. But he was unable to really explain it. He didn't want to give me further tests. I took the medication, became very unwell, and my husband, one day we were out shopping, was asking me if I wanted to go to this shop or that shop, and I just stood in the middle of the street. I had no idea what I was doing or where I was, and when I spoke to my mother about it, she said, I've just listened to something on Radio 4 about a homeopath. You need a homeopath. So frantically looking through the telephone pages, because I was so convinced that she'd got the answer, and luckily for me there was a homeopath 2 roads away, and I went knocking on the door immediately, and she was quite a radical homeopath and said, get rid of all your medication, you don't need it. If you want to come and be treated by me, you have to just go without all the medicine. As a homeopath now myself, I don't actually go that route. It's a mixture, an integration, a bit like Prince Charles's idea of complementary therapy alongside conventional medicine. So I'm in that favour myself. However, I'm here, and it all worked out really well, and from that I then thought I really want to know how homeopathy worked. So I then studied to become a homeopath. At the time I was working in a very busy department store in the perfumery department, and I was never sick. Everyone else working long hours was the classic depressions, flus, colds, coughs, just exhaustion, stress. But I was still bouncing around being very bubbly when everybody else was absolutely flat out. And they sort of a little bit envious really, and in the end when I told them that I was practicing homeopathy for myself and I'd gone to college, they all suddenly started to be patients. So that was when I realised that seeing is believing. People and colleagues were getting so much better, and these huge shifts in their lives, big life-changing decisions they made from maybe just 1 or 2 treatments. Amazing. So that's where I started out my career really, and seeing the difference between people that were in tune with themselves and people that still were in the belief that there was no other options. They went a medical route for a problem, but never stepped out to have a look and see what was beyond that. So when I finished my training, I really wanted to go to India, but I'm not so good at the travelling bit, and I was offered work in East London with 2 Indian doctors, and it was the most exciting time I've ever worked, and I learnt remedies without language.
Wow.
Patients would come in, women mainly, that were bought by their husbands who couldn't speak English, and they would present the wife to you, and you could look in her eyes, you could touch her skin, get her to open her mouth, touch her tummy. She would point to where the problems were. Sometimes she'd cry, sometimes she would be a bit excitable, and you got an essence of the woman, and I prescribed on that, what I could see, feel and touch, and they would get better. And then they would come back and they'd either have notes with them from somebody who could speak English, and they would ask me or request help with something else, and it was usually to do with their husbands and how to improve them in a positive way, of course. So you can prescribe homeopathy with very little language and get results.
Isn't that wonderful?